The crowd gathered at dawn, but no one spoke. Not because they were afraid of the condemned man, but because they were afraid of what they were about to witness. Even in an empire built on blood, conquest, and cruelty, this punishment was different. Roman soldiers had faced screaming battlefields. Executioners had ended thousands of lives without blinking. But when this sentence was announced, many turned pale. Some asked to be replaced. Others prayed the order would be revoked, because this was the one punishment that forced even Rome's hardest men to confront something far worse than death. This was a sentence so disturbing that Roman writers hesitated to describe it, so shameful that later generations tried to forget it ever existed, and so brutal that those ordered to carry it out sometimes refused. This is the hidden story of Rome's most feared execution, a punishment designed not just to kill a body, but to erase a soul. Rome did not rule the world through kindness. It ruled through law, discipline, and fear. From the outside, Roman justice looked precise and logical. Crimes were categorized. Punishments were standardized. Everything had a place. Steal and you might lose a hand. Rebel and you would be crucified. Desert the army and death was swift. Rome believed order was sacred, and anything that threatened that order was treated as a disease. But among all crimes, there was one act Rome considered unforgivable. Not treason, not rebellion, not even murder. It was something far more personal, something that struck at the very heart of Roman identity. To understand this punishment, you must first understand the crime. In Roman society, the family was everything. The state began in the household, and at the center of that household stood one man, the pater familias, the father. Under Roman law, a father held absolute authority over his family, his children, his slaves, even his adult sons. This power was called patria potestas, the power of the father. He could arrange marriages, control property, approve or deny careers. In the earliest days of Rome, he could even legally kill his own children. The father was seen as the foundation of Roman order. To harm him was to harm Rome itself. So when a child murdered their own parent, Rome didn't see it as simple homicide. It saw it as an act against nature, against the gods, against civilization. The crime was called parricide, and for it, Rome reserved a punishment so horrifying that it stood apart from all others. When a Roman court declared someone guilty of parricide, the sentence was not spoken lightly. The magistrate did not shout. The crowd did not cheer, because everyone already knew what was coming. The condemned would suffer poena culi, the punishment of the sack. This was not execution. This was ritual annihilation. The purpose was not merely to kill the criminal, but to erase them from the human world entirely. They were no longer worthy of air, land, or burial. They would die cut off from everything that defined a Roman life. Before the execution, the condemned was stripped of their identity. They were beaten publicly, not out of rage, but ritual. Their head was covered, not to spare them shame, but to separate them from the living world. Then came the sack, a large leather or canvas bag, heavy and suffocating. Inside it, executioners placed not just the criminal, but animals. Each animal chosen for a reason: a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and a snake. Rome believed these creatures symbolized chaos, madness, betrayal, and cruelty. Together they represented everything the criminal had become. The animals were forced into the sack, alive. Then the condemned was shoved inside with them. The sack was sealed. And in that moment, even hardened executioners hesitated, because once sealed, there was no turning back. Roman executioners were professionals. They beheaded criminals. They oversaw crucifixions. They fed prisoners to beasts in arenas. But Poenacule was different. It required prolonged contact, physical struggle, close proximity. Inside the sack, panic erupted. Animals scratched, bit, screamed. The condemned suffocated slowly while being clawed, bitten, and crushed. Executioners could hear everything: the muffled screams, the frantic movement, the thumping as life faded. Some executioners later wrote of nightmares. Others drank heavily after carrying out the sentence. This was not quick. It was not distant. It forced the executioner to be part of the suffering. And then came the final act. Once sealed, the sack was carried to water, a river, a harbor, the sea, not land. Because land was sacred. The condemned was unworthy of touching Roman soil. The sack was thrown into the water, and it sank. If the criminals survived the animals and suffocation, they drowned. No grave, no marker, no name. Rome believed this denied the soul peace. They would wander forever, forgotten. Poenacule was not common. That was intentional. Its rarity made it legendary. Parents whispered about it to children. Judges referenced it in warnings. Writers hinted at it without detail. It became a shadow over Roman society, a reminder that some lines could never be crossed. Even emperors feared being associated with parricide. To be accused was to be socially dead, even before execution. But behind the law were real people. Young men driven by desperation, daughters trapped in abusive households, families torn apart by greed and inheritance. Rome did not care why the crime happened, only that it happened. There were cases where the condemned screamed their innocence until the end. Cases where confessions were forced. Cases where political enemies used the accusation to destroy rivals. Once sentenced, there was no mercy. The sack waited. As centuries passed, Rome began to change. Christianity spread. New ideas entered Roman law. The concept of forgiveness, the sanctity of the soul, the belief that even the worst sinner could repent. Poenacule became uncomfortable, embarrassing, too pagan, too brutal. Some emperors quietly stopped enforcing it. Others replaced it with beheading. Eventually, it faded, not because Rome became kind, but because Rome wanted to forget. Later, historians avoided details. Textbooks softened descriptions. Art omitted it entirely. It didn't fit the image of Rome as a foundation of modern law, so it was erased, almost. Fragments survived. Legal codes, scattered references, enough for us at Hidden Secret Tales to piece together what truly happened. Rome called itself civilized, advanced, orderly. But when threatened, it responded with absolute annihilation. Poenacule was not justice. It was a message. That loyalty mattered more than life. That power mattered more than mercy. That order mattered more than humanity. And perhaps the most disturbing truth is this: the executioners hated it, but they still carried it out. Because in Rome, obedience was survival, and silence was safety. So the next time we admire the grandeur of the Roman Empire, its roads, its laws, its legacy, we must also remember the sack sinking beneath the water, the screams that history tried to drown, and ask ourselves, how many brutal truths still lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered? This is what Hidden Secret Tales exists to remember.